Test 1, 2.
Adam, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
You can.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I'm checking my audio because I am on a different Zoom today. Thank you.
Thank you.
votes have to be roll call.
Yep. There will be a meeting of the Medford City Council Committee of the Whole, April 8th, 2025. This meeting will take place at 5:30 PM in the City Council Chamber, second floor, Medford City Hall, 85 George B. Hassett Drive, Medford, MA, and via Zoom. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Callahan,
Present.
Counselor Lozaro,
Present.
Counselor Lemming, Counselor Scarpelli, Counselor Singh. Counselor Singh is running late. President Bears also said he's running late. Vice President Collins.
Present. That is 5 present, 2 running late. The meeting is called to order. The action discussion items for this evening is Resolution 25048 offered by myself, a resolution to meet on Parking Department Surveillance Report, the Green Line Extension Parking Zone, and parking ordinance updates. So we're going to go in, I think, that order, and we'll see how much we can get through tonight, hopefully all of it, and if not, we will schedule a follow-up committee of the whole expeditiously to get to whatever we don't get to tonight.
If I can have correct this point of information.
Sure, Councilor Scarpelli.
Through the clerk. I thought we were adding the request that I had for the parking department as well. We had some concerns, and I think that I put it in a resolution weeks ago. Were they not in a proper format, or because we had some questions. I know it's not.
Wait, I apologize. What was the request?
Well, I know we talked about the G parking, which is on there, but we also talked about policies and procedures that were in question that I wanted to ask the new director, meaning especially the fact that I received so many phone calls in regards to the appeals process. So I think that's probably, I know there's more, but I think those are the two that I've had a lot of calls and emails about, that get some clarification.
Gotcha. Yeah, thank you. I think I apologize that it wasn't listed on the action and discussion items. I think the intent was that we could
Oh.
ask those of the parking director while she's
Okay,
here for
thank
the
you.
GLX update.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we'll go in that order. First to the review of the parking department surveillance impact reports and use policy. So as a quick overview, these are parts of reporting requirements that are mandated under the Community Control Over Public Surveillance Ordinance, which was ordained in 2023. All city departments that use surveillance technology must complete certain reporting requirements. They must have an impact report for the surveillance technology that they use. They must have a use policy for the surveillance technology that they use, and this must be annually reviewed and approved by the city council. There's also an annual report submitted by the city agency that's using the surveillance technology, and an annual report that is compiled by the city council that kind of compiles all of this information into one publicly accessible report. So this is the first time that we're having the parking department before us. They have one surveillance technology in use, I believe, and thank you for being here to present, and thank you for the timely application of the impact report and use policy. Councilors had this in their packets to review before this meeting. So I'd like to invite up Parking Director McDermott to give a brief overview of anything that you'd like to say germane to the use policy, the impact report. The technology that we're talking about are the automatic license plate readers. And if you could give an overview, you don't have to read word for word from the report, but just an overview of what these are, how they pertain to like what the surveillance element is, why the parking department uses them. That would be helpful to kick off the discussion. Thank you.
Good evening, City President Collins and members of the City Council. But for formality's sake, I'd like to introduce Sarah McDermott, our parking director. She's been with us since December of 2024. She's done an excellent job, and pleased to have this opportunity to introduce her to this council, though some of you have had the opportunity to meet her informally. So thank you.
Hello, thank you for having me. Happy to discuss this technology with all of you. Currently, we have 2 vehicles equipped with license plate recognition technology that is used to enforce parking regulations in the city of Medford. That is it does so by reading the plate the cameras are designed to read text primarily. So it will read the plate, and every plate that is stored in the system, we are a permitless city, so we don't give a physical permit. The permits that the citizens purchase are tied to their license plate, and this technology reads that plate, and that in combination with GPS coordinates determines whether a vehicle is parked legally on this in the city or not. It also will, there are several areas that are no parking or regulated as a tow zone, restricted in another way, and it will also recognize a vehicle parked in violation of those rules as well. So that's the primary function of the technology.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any initial questions from counselors? Seeing none, would you mind also giving an overview of the impact report that you supplied to the council? Just the headlines.
Sure. Thank you. Just have to remember which was which. Sorry about that.
I understand.
Already went over that part. So the primary function of it, I just explained, but the reason we use this technology, there are a couple of main reasons. One is the safety of our officers. Right now we have we have 5 total full-time parking control specialists, one of which is the foreman. 2 of those full-time staff work in the evenings after it gets dark. One works 4 p.m. to 12 a.m., one works 3 a.m. to 11 a.m. And those folks are on the street on their own and enforcing rules that often cause conflict with people who disagree with receiving a citation. Having the license plate recognition vehicles in place allows the officers to more safely enforce the parking rules, and it allows them to stay in their vehicle, complete the ticket, and only be out of their vehicle to place the ticket on a vehicle. The use of the LPR system is for the whole city of Bedford, but primarily right now it's only used on permitted streets. So, and the only reason we have to go down a street in the LPR vehicle is to enforce parking regulations for that street. The cost of the LPR system in total to be paid over the course of 3 years, according to the original quote, is $145,547.09. Since we began using it in early July of 2024, the citations generated by the LPR system, I didn't put the total in there, but it's above $70,000 that's already been recovered in revenue, specifically from the LPR enforcement. I don't believe there are any adverse effects impacting civil rights or civil liberties with the use of this product. It's designed to identify license plates. It takes still photos. It doesn't take video. Any people, faces caught in the background of an image inadvertently are blurred automatically by by Sensen, who's the creator of the technology. Their software automatically blurs any images of faces. There's no retention of data outside of the scope of what the city requires for public record maintenance. So we can set the data to be stored or, dumped at any given interim. So that for non-citation related data, it might be a different scope, but that I haven't. It's probably the same, but I mean whatever we need to retain, we retain only for that time. And at this time, the Medford Police Department has zero access to any of the data collected from the license plate recognition vehicles. I just had it set up so that the users from the Medford Police Department who have system administrative credentials, because they need to create logins and edit logins and delete old users, they previously had access to the information, though after I spoke to both traffic sergeants, they weren't aware they had access to that information until I told them. And subsequently that's been removed. So they still have all their same access to the database and what they need to do to perform their duties without having access to any data captured by the license plate recognition cameras.
Great, thank you, and I appreciate that.
Sure.
I think that this is kind of the intent of the city working together to put these kind of safeguards around surveillance technology is so that we can make sure that there's a structure for exactly that kind of checking and rigor, which is to say, any access to surveillance data or surveillance technology that does not have to exist should not exist because it makes us all a little less safe and less cyber secure in the city. So appreciate that. I'll keep an eye out for questions from I see one question from Councillor Callahan. Go again, Councillor Callahan.
Thank you, and I apologize for the person sick and don't want anybody else to get what I have, so just a cold. But my question is about whether there is any agreement with the company that provides this information or provides this technology in the contract, or with any partner of theirs, any third party, that any information that is captured by Medford cameras would go to anyone aside from Medford.
At this time, no, they do not share the data collected by the city of Medford with any other entities, and nor have I heard of them being subpoenaed or having that information requested of them. Any information that the public or another company would want, the public would come through us and we would go through the standard process of providing public information. But as far as our data being captured and given to other entities, that's not something that GTechna or Sense. So Sensen created the license plate recognition cameras and the technology, the software that powers it, and that is integrated with GTechna, who is our parking management company. So those two companies together collect and store the data, and as the data is collected by Sensense technology and transferred to GTechna, it's encrypted, so it remains secure while it's transferred into GTechna's database.
Great, and if I follow that up with, so it sounds like Sensen and GTech, if I got those correct, at some point, each of them has the data. Do you know if Sensen deletes the data once it is transferred? And do you know if GTech has any access to the data?
Both have said, I have emails from GTechna and from Sensen saying that data not related to a parking citation is dumped after 30 days. But that, like I said before, we might have to update with them and have them keep this information longer. When I look in my database, which is called Command Center, where all of this data is stored and where I can access it, I see every hit that the cameras have collected since its inception in July. So we still have all that information available for the public. It's just not stored by GTechna or Sensen, but we still could provide it to a citizen who was interested in it.
Thank you.
Great, thank you for that answer. I appreciate that, and great to know that this has already been at least raised to Sensen and GTechna. I know for myself, and this brings up a question that I was going to the question around the longevity of this data, both locally and with GTechna and Sensen. I think it would be useful in the use policy to have some language that specifies like a concrete sunlighting date for the data, whether it is stored locally, and some clarity around the municipal records retention schedules. I know that those are citywide, but I think that people are generally familiar with what that actually dictates. And I think it would be a helpful amendment to the use policy to see that specified how long this data is being stored. I can understand that it needs to be stored for some amount of time in case somebody wants to make an appeal, which they should be able to do, of course. But I think it'd be helpful to have some concrete language about for how long is it remaining.
Okay, I think that's a fair request.
Great.
And I think we can update that very soon.
Great, thank you. And kind of going along with that, sorry, looking back at my notes here, I think that it sounds like the information that we've received from Sensen and GTechna so far is that there's no indication that they have any agreements with other entities to use the data that is transferred back to them in any kind of way. which is great to hear. That's what I'd like to assume. I think it would be helpful to have that, some language around that, and like, even if it's an annual confirmation of that in our contract with them, written into the use policy. I think that is, in a lot of cases with surveillance data and surveillance technology, it's kind of the concentric circles of it all. It's not just, is it secure here? Is it secure with the people who have access to it? Is it secure with the people who created the software that allows us to get this data in the first place? So if that could be kind of a related amendment in the use policy, just that we're confirming with the people who enable the surveillance technology that it is also not being transferred, not being sold, not being shared, and like a very specific sunlight date on their end as well. I think that would be very valuable.
Okay,
Great, thank you.
thank you.
Seeing no other further questions from counselors at this time, I just had one other. Let me pull up the section of this is on still on the use policy. For number 6, you mentioned, and you spoke to this at this time, the parking department is not seeking to share access of the technology or the data with any other agency, department, bureau, division, or unit. That's great. That makes sense. I think it would be helpful just to shore up that language to make it a declaration of this is something that will not happen. Not only are we not intending for it to happen right now, this is something that we are not allowing within the parameters of this technology's use. Would be a helpful amendment.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns, compliments from other counselors on the parking department's impact report or use policy? Seeing none. So we just cataloged a few, hopefully quick amendments to the records retention, some confirmations there, and a quick amendment to the use policy section 6 to state affirmatively, the switch from no intent to share access to will not share access. If that can be updated and then submitted back to the council next week to be included in our annual surveillance reporting, that would be great.
I think that's doable.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there any public comment on this item before we proceed to the next item on our agenda? Great, come on up. Thank you, Director.
Barry Ingber, 9 Draper Street in Medford. Thank you, Vice President Collins, for the opportunity to speak. And thank you, Ms. Nazarian and Ms. McDermott, for your good work on this. From a civil rights and civil liberties perspective, this technology and this policy is pretty close to striking exactly the balance that we're looking for of gaining the efficiency that you need in order to do parking enforcement well, while protecting the civil liberties of people in our city. That's what we're looking for. That's what we were looking for when we pushed for the CCOPS ordinance, and I'm glad to see that happening here. That said, I just want to do one little educational piece and make some minor comments which were pretty much laid out by Vice President Collins. The educational piece is that even when you don't capture data about human beings, when you're not taking pictures of people's faces or you're erasing those from your data collection, the tracking of vehicles can be used to track people and has been used to track people. So even without what would appear to be personal data, that does pose a potential civil liberties threat. Again, I think that you address it well by saying this is only to be used for parking enforcement, and that's what would concern us. So then there's the little technical pieces. One is the retention policy, which I think you're going to address. It's not clear to me why, when there's no citation involved, you would need to retain that information at all. it would seem that it should be deleted that very night. With regard to Getechna and their affiliate organization, I think as was stated, you need to have a contractual provision with them to make sure that they are not selling or using the data in any way that that neither you nor we want them to be using it for. And also the amendment to Section 6 that Vice President Collins pointed out. Other than that, I would say good work. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. Is there any additional public comment on this item?
The only, thank you, President Collins. The only thing I'd like to add to the conversation for purposes of information is Mr. Ingber's question as far as why the data has to be retained if it's not pertaining to a ticket. I could be mistaken about this, and I think we probably need to confirm with council, but once a public record is created within the city, it is a record, and then it is required to be maintained under the Massachusetts Municipal Retention Schedule. So I don't think we have the ability to expedite the deletion of that data. I think we have a legal requirement to maintain that data. But again, we will look into that and we will follow through.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Feel free to approach the podium.
I just, Barry Ingber, 9 Draper Street, just to say why it is important. If it is a public record, then any member of the public can request that information. Then any member of the public can utilize that to track people. So that if you're taking pictures in front of a dispensary or in front of a medical establishment or in front of a mosque or in front of a church, then people can start to use that data in ways that we would not want them to use. Because a public record is available to bad actors as well as to people looking for their own personal private information.
All right. Thank you for that context. Great, thank you all. Seeing no additional public comment on this item, thank you, councilors, Nina, Sarah, members of the committee for the review of these documents. Thank you for, again, for your thoroughness and timeliness with this very first submission. Appreciate it, especially you being, well, not really that new to the department, but appreciate it anyway. All right, moving right along. Our second topic is updates about the Green Line Extension parking program and other related questions about the parking program. So I know you've prepared an overview. Please feel free to give us an overview of the GLX program, how it's been going so far, whatever you think is germane to the topic, and then we can entertain questions from counselors.
Sure. So just an hour or so ago, I reviewed my inbox, the prior director's inbox, and the parking public email account for complaints specific to the G zone. I searched the G zone, I searched GLX zone, and the only one I found was from its early inception. It was a citizen concerned about his visitor passes and whether this would impact his dead-end street filling with cars and being unable to use his visitor pass. I believe there was one other formal complaint that Jim Silva, of the prior special projects manager who helped get the G zone started, he mentioned during the February 25 Traffic Commission meeting that he had only been informed of one formal complaint. There, according to him, I know that's hearsay, but he also stated that there was some complaints on social media, but nothing that had come through in a formal fashion specific to the G zone. So having been here just for the end of the trial period and then its the decision in February by the Traffic Commission to make the G zone permanent, that's what I know about concerns related to the G zone. I personally think that zoned parking is the way to go. It doesn't have to be the whole city, because I know not every part of Medford needs zoned parking. Not every part of Medford needs parking permits according to its citizens. So, but for the areas adjacent to the train stations, the new Green Line extension, I think it's beneficial. The other benefit that we recently not discovered, but kind of came to light is when we've been working with engineering to ensure that when they have a street project and cars are displaced, that they don't receive a ticket because they were, for example, on Willis Avenue, there's a large project underway to replace water lines, I believe, something that's going to displace vehicles. And so all of Willis Avenue and the side streets that are impacted, if that was a zone, then those vehicles could park anywhere in the zone and not have to worry about whether they were going to get a ticket. And the contractors and engineering and my department wouldn't have to try and communicate, hey, you park on this street, now you have to park on this one during this project, because some people might not want to park on that street. So if they were in a zoned area, it would benefit them when there's a project underway that would displace their normal parking area. So that's another benefit we recently, and that's an argument I made at the Traffic Commission meeting in February in favor of making the G zone long-term. So.
Great. Thank you. And just super briefly, no, we don't have a lot of attendees in chambers or on Zoom this evening, but just in case there are folks watching online who are kind of new to this issue, could you just in like a snapshot explain the goals of the G zone parking program and just in general, the geographic area that it sits over?
Sure. So the G zone is in the southern part of Medford. It runs along Main Street, but excludes Main Street. So Main Street is a border, George Street is a border, and the south side, the border along Broadway, that borders Somerville. Those are the rough borders of the G zone, and every street within that zone is included. And when somebody who lives in the G zone purchases a parking permit, they can then park on any street in the G zone. And that was to kind of prevent, I don't know if it was to prevent people from parking there with the Green Line extension opening, or if it was to ensure the people living in that area that regardless of if people come here and park to commute, you will have a place on your street. Having not been here for the original meetings regarding the G zone, that's my speculation as to why it was recommended in the first place. Because the thing that's scary, and progress is great when it comes to public transportation. So having those, I grew up on Winchester Street. I heard about this ball squared Green Line stop since early 2000s. And now that it's finally here, it's an opportunity for people to commute, not be single occupancy cars, all these wonderful benefits. But it means that people are more likely to come park in that neighborhood in order to commute on the train. So rather than, those streets were already, for the most part, permit parking, is my understanding. And so just allowing, let's say I still lived on Winchester Street. If Winchester Street filled up with commuters in the early part of that GLX opening, I could then park on Morton Avenue or New Bern or somewhere else close to my residence, and it wouldn't impact me personally as much.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So that's my understanding of the goals of it.
Great. Thank you so much. And as a G zone resident, that matches my experience as well. Councilor Scarpelli, we'll go to you for questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Vice President. Thank you for being here and welcome. I think that prior to you, I think maybe hopefully your colleagues or City Hall informed you, the relationship with the former department and the residents were very, very difficult. So complaints weren't going to your office because when other complaints went to that office, they just weren't heard. So there was no faith there. And I hope that changes. So the calls that we received, I think the biggest concern and the biggest issue right now is the lack of information. And I'll give you one. The phone calls I received from people saying that we're selling parking spots so people from outside the city of Medford can buy parking in Medford and take a Medford residence parking spot so they can take the Green Line. These are the things that have been floating out there, right? The report that this is still a pilot program, correct? And no one really knows that this was changed, right? This is a full-time program now. And I think maybe just if we can, I would recommend just a report or a press release or anything you could share with, even with the council, that to enlighten us how many people have taken advantage of this program and how it's benefiting people, and where they're using these parking spots, because I think that the calls that I got really did affect some residents, that when they came home, there were cars that were parked there. They're not their neighbors, they're not their cars, and they understand that there's this new parking, but don't understand it. So, and I think that not having an avenue where there was someone on the other line, because the feeling was, and believe me, I understand traffic and parking. I work very closely in municipality. I work with our traffic and parking department. We understand how difficult it is. And it's a very volatile situation at times. But what we were hearing at times, that even when the person on the residence end would call in, you would get negativity right off the bat. And it would become so combative that it really wasn't productive at all. So that's when that's some of the calls that I received. And I think that's why I brought that up back some months ago about getting some information prior to it becoming a full-time program. So I think if there's any way that, you could give us just a brief report, just give us an update on how many people have taken advantage of it, how many people purchased the parking, what are our benefits financially, how we benefit from it, are people taking advantage of it? And then just informing them just the basic guidelines that this isn't free parking for people outside the city of Medford. I mean, again, these are the things that unfortunately people didn't have the warm and fuzzies calling the former office, because it got right off the bat combative, and it got turned off very, very quickly. So, and don't get me wrong, I know 9 out of 10 times the person calling is going to have an attitude. Why? Because they're angry. And it shouldn't be on the person that's answering the phone. That's not fair. But again, at the same time, we are a customer service-based industry here, and listening to those constituents, even when they are 1,000% wrong, I think it's very important. I think that, and as we turn the corner and we meet our new director, I'm pretty excited about starting off fresh and making sure that there's an avenue where residents have someone they can call and in essence, get set straight. So if you can, through the chair, if we can offer that as an amendment to just share something with our residents, that something's very simple, that, that maybe will alleviate phone calls to you where they, Council Scott Pelley, A, B, and C, said, well, here's the truth, and send that off, I think would be beneficial.
Okay, so let me just address this first and foremost.
Yeah.
We do not sell parking permits to any non-resident of
Right.
the city of Medford.
Right.
I live in Clinton, Massachusetts.
Right.
I'm the parking director. Could I buy a parking pass because I want to take the train? Absolutely not.
Mhm.
The requirements to get a resident parking pass are your registration, your vehicle must be garaged in the city of Medford on the street you're purchasing your permit for, whether it's the G zone or outside the G zone. And you need proof of residence, whether it's excise tax, other tax documents, utilities, vehicle registration itself, if you are also, garage there and you live there. So no permit outside are issued to anybody who does not live in Medford. And these are annual permits. So every year we re-verify that data before we sell another permit. Regarding people saying that their car on their street, it's a new car, I don't know this car, they don't belong here. That does happen quite a bit, not even just in the G zone, because we are permitless.
Right.
So I have a couple of residents who regularly email me when there's unfamiliar vehicles on their street. And we don't target enforce, so I'm not gonna pull one of my parking enforcement specialists from one area to immediately go there. I ask the closest one to work it into their day.
Right.
Rather than, because I don't want them to stop
Right. And you
what
only,
they're
you
doing
only
on
have,
one street to go.
you only have a
focus on
few of
another.
them too, so. we
Correct.
understand.
So very often, I don't want to give a percentage or speculate, but very often I email back that person or call them back and say, hey, that person actually does have a permit for your street. Now you know going forward, because perhaps someone new moved in, they just got their pass, it's an unfamiliar car. So I say more often than not, it is an illegally parked car, but there are instances where somebody reports a vehicle and it is actually allowed to be in the area it's in. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, I love listening to people's. It might sound crazy. I've been in this industry since 2010.
Right.
I've heard it all. I've spoken to and emailed with several constituents who I have heard have had frequent complaints or frequent issues, and it's fulfilling when I can get them to understand maybe another perspective. You know, if some people might not understand that we need meters. I had a woman asking about the meters at the library because the library doesn't have enough parking, from what I hear, for its clients. And I had to try and explain, you know, it's not just the library. We also have other businesses. We have other businesses in Medford that need that short-term parking so they can have customers as well. So I really enjoy taking those calls and getting those emails and trying to satisfy people who in the past haven't gotten the satisfaction that they're looking for. I find that so often, and I believe I mentioned this during my interview process, that a lot of them just want to be heard, and they don't necessarily need a problem solved per se, but they want to feel like somebody at least recognizes the issue. So I try and take time out of my day to do that for people if they communicate with me directly. Could there be better communication by email from the rest of the staff? That is something I can look into and address and see, maybe look at some past emails, see how the tone is, see if it's maybe a little cold, if we can warm it up and make people feel more heard. So that's.
I appreciate that.
Sure.
So I think that'll go a long way. And like I said, it's, you know, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said a lot of times people just want to be listened to and then told, you know, thank you, but you're wrong, and move on. So I think that, again, I think that that's important, but that's, I think for the G zone, I think you know, answering that question and publicly, and although no one's really here and no one's on Zoom, but it'll be nice to get something that we can share with our constituents if they ask, because again, people don't like to search. People don't like to do their homework. They just rather call and complain and have someone else do their homework. So, so if that's possible, that'd be a great assistance to at least myself. So thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, any of the council members are welcome to reach out to me directly with
Care-
questions
careful.
regarding parking, if
Yeah,
that.
careful.
Am I opening up too many doors here?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you, Director. I agree. I think that, I think it'll be worthwhile. There is some great information about the Green Line Zone on the city website. It's been up there for a while, and I think the councilor's point is sound that people like things to be really at their fingertips, and it has been a while since the G zone was piloted, since it was codified as permanent. I think that, you know, more information is always better to make sure that it reaches people here in this, you know, rather fragmented information environment that we have here in Medford. And I will say for myself, again, as a resident of the G zone, I really like it. I think it's a huge improvement. You know, it's not my job to proselytize for the zoned parking, but I find myself wanting to, just because living in that neighborhood, I think it's a vast improvement. And I think it would be helpful for there to be more readily available information about what are the reasons why this was instituted in the first place, to help people understand the pros, in addition to the changes or some of their perceived cons as we continue to get used to it.
Okay, I think that's a fair request, and I think you're correct that the information on our website regarding the G zone needs updating, and if nothing else, to say that it was made permanent by the Traffic Commission. So that is noted. I will make sure to update that information for the public.
Great, thank you. Is there any other questions or comments from counselors on the G zone? or other related parking enforcement topics? Seeing none and none on Zoom, is there any public comment or questions about this topic? Seeing none. Thank you so much. Really
you.
appreciate the overview. And thank you for your work in the parking department. A undersung but important department in our
Thank you
city.
for that acknowledgement.
All right, on to our last topic for the evening. We are making good time. This bodes well for the rest of our evening, knock on wood. The third topic is the proposed ordinance change. Sorry, I X'd out of my agenda, but I think had the information about that. Yes, so this is a proposed amendment from the city administration regarding Chapter 78, Article 3, Division 2, subsection 1, Section 78-173, pertaining to municipal employee and business parking in back of City Hall. Would you like to give an overview of the what and the why of this proposed amendment?
Sure. So this came up just since I began in December. Shortly after I began in December, there, as you all may know, there was a discovery made in the commuter lot there between Clippership Drive and I-93, which may require some excavation in the future, which was concerning because that lot is used as an overflow lot for City Hall employees who may or may not find a space in the back of City Hall, because the spaces are often used not just by City Hall visitors, but also, well, City Hall employees use it, City Hall visitors use it legally, they're allowed to, but we also have people who go to Atrius Health on a regular basis. We have people who park there and hop on the 94 or the 96 bus and leave their vehicles there all day. So the concern is that with an overflow lot potentially being removed, that City Hall employees may not have adequate space to park their vehicles, depending on how much space is removed from that lot. So I think that was the beginning of the move to make the spaces behind City Hall for City Hall employees only, leaving the spaces out front for visitors. And then the lot up here is still available for now, and the lot where the buses pick up are also pay-to-park areas. They're metered parking. So those could also be used by visitors if they were willing to pay $1 for an hour, or, you know, however long they need it. So that was what started it, I guess.
If I'm reading this correctly, this would be to repeal the use of one of these lots as the overflow lot.
It would be to repeal the use of the lot behind City Hall, directly behind City Hall, for municipal visitors, and
Okay.
make the spaces for City Hall employees, with the exception of the electric vehicle charging spaces, the handicap accessible spaces, and the veteran space. Those would remain accessible to all who meet the requirements of those spaces.
Mhm.
But any other regular space between Clippership, City Hall Mall, the lot behind that lot, and then City Hall itself, those spaces would be for City Hall employees only during City Hall hours. So outside of City Hall hours, they could still be used by visitors to Bedford Square.
Okay, thank you. And sorry, just to double confirm, the lot that's being repealed for visitor use, is it the one directly abutting City Hall in back of us, or is the one
Directly
closer to
behind City
the?
Hall, where the buses pick up behind City Hall, is the next lot. So that lot wouldn't change. It's
Okay,
just,
it's just the area immediately around City Hall in
Correct.
back is just for City Hall employees.
correct.
And then visitors can park like the next lot over
Or in the front of
or
City
in the
Hall.
front. Okay,
Yes,
got it. Sorry, I just,
it's fine.
I really need a diagram in front of me at all times. Great, thank you. So that would be repealing the visitor parking during business hours provision, so it remains as only an overflow lot for municipal employees.
Correct.
Great. Any questions or comments from my fellow counselors on this proposed change? Oh, thank you. Sorry, my computer screen is not big enough. Go ahead, Counselor Lazaro.
Thank you. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Do we know how many City Hall employees are at City Hall on average during City Hall hours, and how many parking spaces? Like, does it correspond accurately? Is it the right amount of spaces?
I don't know the number of City Hall employees that regularly come to City Hall Monday through Friday, but there are, I think, 96 spaces available in that lot, which may include the handicap accessible spaces, or I believe there are 4 or 5. I think there's actually 4. So there's between 90 and 95 spaces that would be taken away from visitors if this were to be passed.
And is it okay if I keep going, Vice President Collins?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the hours are 8:30 to 4:30, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, 8:30 to, is it 7:30 on Wednesday? And then 8:30 to 12:30 on Friday, I think.
Yes.
So it would just be those hours, only City Hall employees. And then the other hours, it would be open parking. The thing that I'm thinking about is there's another complicating factor, which is that often businesses like the Chevalier uses the City Hall lot as their sort of like suggested municipal parking for people going to shows at night. It is kind of a nice thing to have a municipal lot that doesn't really get policed. It's also sort of unheard of to have a lot that's free that nobody pays money to park at. So I understand why we wouldn't necessarily, need to maintain that. Um, so I don't know. I'm feeling some hesitation, but in myself. But I guess I would be curious if we had the number of employees who are in City Hall. I feel like Nina would know that. No, not off the top of your head, maybe.
Thank you. I don't know that information off the top of my head. I was thinking of potentially counting and potentially giving some sort of ballpark estimate, the number of employees we have in City Hall. But I think the couple things to say as it pertains to your question, Councilor Lazaro, is it's already been stated, but we do find, that if an employee approaches the City Hall lot, let's say anytime beyond the window of maybe 9:30 or 10 a.m., the lot is chock full. And we know that there are a number, I can tell you from my own viewing, there's definitely one person who takes the 94 bus. I can describe the vehicle. I don't think that's necessary here. But, we can't enforce that right now. We can't, deter that individual, whoever that may be, from parking behind City Hall because we don't have any traffic commission requirements that are in place. And the part of this entire process, we realized that didn't exist, and that was kind of as how we were approaching resolving that issue. And then our parking director identified and came to realize that there was an ordinance that also spoke to the same issue. And that's,
Yeah.
I guess, all I wanted to really mention here in all of this, because it's really something that creates an obstacle for employees as they're coming back from meetings, either at a different facility, or if they're coming in late for any reason, or have, let's say we have a situation where someone's taking a half day and they're trying to come back. It creates an obstacle into getting to work, truly.
I understand. That's crazy. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
And might I just add that since I began in December, I've had multiple City Hall employees ask me, when are we going to change the slot? What's going on with that? I've heard this was happening. So I think it's something that the employees want, not that that's necessarily a deciding factor, but it is something that that I've heard quite a bit about from employees since I began.
Thank you for that overview. I think this is reasonable. I think we certainly have a lot of parking in the square very close to City Hall that people can also take advantage of. I hope that decreases over time and as our transit system improves, and we don't need to have quite so much parking surrounding City Hall, but given that we now do, I don't think that this is a bad change to make. I would request, I'm sure that this is something, I'm absolutely positive this is a policy you've discussed already. I think it would be great to see a 30-day warning period before tickets are given out, just so that people can adjust their habits. I'm seeing nods, so I see this as something you were already thinking about.
Yeah, we're definitely going to communicate first, and then there will be at least, I mean 30-day communication, that's reasonable. And then in addition to that, we wouldn't just on that 31st day go out and bang out a bunch of parking citations. We would issue some warnings, let people know, the regulars could catch on, like, oh, I can't get away with this anymore. And then hopefully they would find another place to go without actually having to pay a fine if they receive a warning. So the plan, I believe I discussed with Steve, the communications director, to do 2 weeks of warnings after the initial communication, which I believe we were going to communicate for 2 weeks, but we can extend that. That's not a problem. So yeah, and then a couple weeks of warnings before any actual tickets are written. And I currently have every City Hall employee who has submitted their registration to the parking department is entered as a city employee. And so they're all ready to go. So our parking staff can identify who's who out there.
That's great. Thank you. Sounds like the ducks are in a row on this. Are there any additional questions or comments from counselors on this proposed change? Seeing none. Thank you so much for the overview. So let me just get organized here with the motions to come out of this meeting. I think that we will need a motion to receive and place on file the impact report and use policy for the parking department. And that's, of course, this doesn't need to be in the motion, but that's with the expectation that the updated version will be coming this week ahead of the annual reporting deadline. A second motion to request more communication from the parking department and the city administration about the G-zone parking program to distribute to residents. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Councilor Scarpelli?
And if any of my colleagues like to second that.
Great. Thank you so much. And then I think we could use a third motion to approve,
Make
to
the
report out
motion
of
to
committee.
approve.
Thank you. That's the motion too. Let's finish the sentence. Report out of committee
That's
the
motion to-
proposed
I'll approve that.
repeal of Chapter 73, Article 3, Division 2, Subsection 1, Section 78, 173. We'll let the clerk catch up. You can copy and paste from the agenda. Okay, I will restate to you in just a sec. Okay, so these three motions are all by Councilor Scarpelli and seconded by Councilor Singh. They are to receive and place on file the parking department's impact report and use policy for ALPRs, to request more information and communications on the G-zone parking program from the parking director and city administration, and to report out of committee the repeal of the ordinance. And I can send you this text if that's helpful, Mr. Clerk. Great. Will do. All right, on the motion by Counselor Scarpelli, seconded by Counselor Sang. Mr. Clerk, when you're ready, please call the roll.
On the first motion. Counselor Callahan,
Yes.
Counselor Lozaro,
Yes.
Counselor Lemming. Counselor Scarpelli. Counselor Singh. President Bears. Vice President Collins.
Yes. Is that 7 of us? We're all 7 here? 7 in favor, 0 opposed, motion passes. Go ahead, Counselor Scarpelli.
Thank you. One other topic I know that I want to address this evening, maybe just as a starting point. I know that the process we have, and correct me if I'm wrong, for appealing a ticket, that the resident that would get the ticket would appeal in a certain amount of time, and then it would be ruled on. And then if it's ruled not in their favor, then there's an option for them to go to the next level, correct? And that would go to a state level where there's a higher fee? Is that,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah,
I-
correct. And generally, the fine that is implemented is significantly less than the court
Right.
costs to take it to the next step. So I have yet, in my 4 months here, to see anybody go that route.
Right.
And I hate, personally, hate's a strong word. I don't love having to tell them that that's their only recourse. But I'm happy to discuss this issue. I would love to have some time to prepare and show
So why don't we do
what we
that?
have.
Yeah,
But if I can give you a quick rundown or answer.
Yeah,
your
because I
questions.
think it'll be maybe
I
just a discussion with the two of us. I think that, because just so you know, and after you're, so the conversation I've been getting from residents is they feel like it's a trap, that there really isn't anybody listening when it comes time to appeal a ticket, that if they appeal a ticket at noon, at 12:15, they're getting denied right away. And it seems like, you know, not knowing who's doing the appeals process and stuff like that. So I think it's something I'm getting a lot of phone calls with that, saying, I got a ticket, this is why the reasoning. When you know, is it true what they said? Probably not, but when
Some
you
of
hear it.
them, some of them do have a very quick turnaround because it's
Yeah.
obvious that the citation is valid.
Right.
And many cases, the person is pleading for sympathy.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I was just here one time. How come I don't get a warning? That kind of thing, which is not, if we will review the citation, it
Mhm.
doesn't take a very long time. We can make sure the plate is entered correctly, that the location is correct, and that verify that it is a valid citation in a very quick manner, which then takes that off of the clerk's plates, which, to answer another question, the parking clerks are responsible for the electronic appeals. If somebody files an appeal in person or mails one in, then it goes to my desk. So we divide that duty among I think there are 2 of the clerks that handle it. One of them, our part-time clerk, generally stays out of the appeals. So it's the 2 full-time clerks and myself who make the decisions based on the evidence provided by the citizen. And I will say, Counselor Scarpelli, very often, just in the 4 months I've been here, we get an appeal, whether it's electronic or in person, and there's no evidence provided. Like, let's say, for example, that I paid my meter and I still got a ticket. So when I file my appeal, there's no attachment to show the receipt, and then we'll deny the appeal. And then they'll say, oh, hey, well, here's my receipt, which should have gone on in the first place. And we will honor that. I mean, I will. If I see that come in, okay, but next time, please provide this, because there have been some issues with GTechna that I have identified and resolved regarding uploads to the appeals. If you upload an electronic image, it usually shows you what you've uploaded in text, .pdf as it were, but that text was coming up white. So people couldn't see if their attachment was there. We've since fixed that. I've gotten complaints in my time here about the website listed on the back of the ticket itself not working for everybody. So I just reordered a whole new batch of paper with an updated website to make that process easier.
Okay.
So if there are issues that are legitimate, we will address them.
Okay.
But as far as I can tell, the way we're processing the appeals is by the letter of the law per Mass General Law. We get them, we process them within 10 days. We get them, we give them 21 days. We accept up till that 21st day. And then even some I have overturned even after denial once evidence is presented, specifically because I knew there was an issue with uploading electronic documents. So, but I have no problem maintaining that policy of reviewing data after the fact if it's a legitimate appeal.
So if I can, obviously, I've asked for this months ago, it wasn't on the agenda, so like I said, maybe I'll set something up for a 15-minute phone call or 10-minute
Yeah.
phone call, just to touch base, so I can give you specifics, so you can understand what I'm saying.
Sure,
All right,
and then
thank you.
if I need more time to look into something after
Sure.
that call, by all means, well, I'm happy
right.
to do that
Thank
for
you
you.
so much.
Thank you, Counselor Scarpelli. We'll go to President Bears and then we'll circle back to our final two motions.
Thank you, President Chair Collins. I just want to apologize to Councilor Scarpelli. That was my omission of putting this on the agenda. I do think a paper did go up though at some point to the mayor's office that included the information. That's on the agenda. That's on me, but I think it went up with records whenever you made that.
Great. Thank you, President Bears. Seeing no further comments or hands on Zoom. So we have a couple other motions to vote through. So the second one is the request for more info and communications on G-Zone parking program from the parking director and city administration. Mr. Clerk, whenever you're ready, please call the roll.
Council Callahan.
Yes.
Council Lozaro.
Yes.
Council Lemming. Council Scarpelli. Council Singh. President Bears. Vice President Collins.
Yes, seven in favor, 0 opposed, the motion passes. And on the final motion to report out of committee, the ordinance repeal that we just discussed. Whenever you're ready.
Council Callahan.
Yes.
Council Lozaro.
Yes.
Council Lemming. Council Scarpelli. Council Singh. President Bears. Vice President Collins.
Yes, 7 in favor, none opposed. The motion passes. Thank you so much for, yep, go ahead.
Thank you, Vice President Collins. A procedural question. I assume that now that the repeal has been reported out of committee, it would go on the April 29th meeting, and considering the limited questions and concerns, is it fair to assume that probably representation wouldn't be required at that meeting, or just trying to get a feel from the council?
I think that's probably fair. I do want to speak for other counselors. I doubt that I will have further questions on the topic. If I do, I'll try to email them ahead of time and encourage other counselors to do so. So that's the best I got.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Great. Thank you so much for your presence with us for this multi-topic committee of the whole. Really appreciate your time and all your hard work. Is there a motion to adjourn? On the motion by Councilor Singh to adjourn, seconded by President Bears. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Council Callahan.
Yes.
Council Lozaro.
Yes.
Council Lemming. Council Scarpelli. Council Singh. President Bears. Vice President Collins.
Yes. 7 in favor, none opposed. The meeting is adjourned.